Thanks, Hannington, and thanks, Glenn. Right, let's kick things off then. The last 6 months have really seen a disrupted market as the COVID-19 pandemic struck, and it's likely that we'll experience that for the next 6 months or so. So with that in mind, and thinking that this is a growth planning show, are we right to be talking about growth, or should we be talking more about stability and building resilience in a business? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, go on. I'll tell you what, I'll dive in first. For me, stability is absolutely the key. But arguably, once you've stabilised, are you growing, or do you just want to keep it as it is? The flip side of that is, as well, is for some businesses, you've actually gone backwards. So you'll stabilise and then grow back to the level you were. So there's a growth in the last 6 months, but it's only back to where you are. Again, I'm just putting it out there in a different sort of context. So stability, absolutely 100%, but there are still some growth potentials there as well. But I won't take all of that time up. Hannington, what are your thoughts?
All right, so I'll take mine and your time. I would say resilience for the majority of businesses and growth, for a few, just because of the time, we're living in. And by definition, I think the term resilience, comprises of two components, crisis management and business continuity. Therefore, I think resilience, represents the ability, of businesses to rapidly adapt and respond to all types of risks, such as natural disasters, cyber attacks, the pandemic, and also the big elephant in the room, BREXIT. To qualify that, I'll give an anecdotal example that shows that the majority of businesses, local and national, even global, are fighting for their survival or resilience as a result of the pandemic. A case in point is a study, that was conducted by a global consultancy firm, McKinsey and Co., that assessed, the impact of the pandemic on UK SMEs prior and during, the pandemic. The study found that, before the pandemic, 80% of SMEs surveyed reported stable and growing revenue streams. That was before the pandemic. And recently they conducted a similar study that found that 80% said that they had a decline in revenue. So with those stats in mind, I think it is evident that resilience is a driver for value creation, and it is intrinsic or an intrinsic part in growth planning, or including business planning for that matter. So yes, you can separate the two, but I feel resilience is that, foundation. Maybe to use an analogy of building a house, it's when you're building a house without a solid foundation, you cannot, build, a house. And in this case, you may not be able to grow your business sustainably.
Absolutely. I concur with Hannington, just diving in there, that resilience is 100% part of a growth plan. And I think sort of periodically, previously, most businesses were looking at growth, bringing in the money, revenue, new customers. But the one thing that was forgotten about was that resilience part of that. How can you make that happen? How have you ensured your staff are going to be skilled and available and flexible and fluid and can use great platforms like Teams, which we all learned very, very early on in February, but we'd had for months and months and months, So although the council had brought these various different tools in, we hadn't used them or learnt them, because whoever saw the pandemic coming, and how many of us genuinely could even look at any growth plan or business plan you wrote for the last 15 years and you've got the word pandemic in there. So, I think this is a new way of doing things, and I think what it's done is it's shown some of those areas, those weak areas. So businesses will look at resilience now as a real core part of, and it gives you that dynamicism, that ability to be agile, etc. So yeah, part of a growth plan, 100%. Which comes first? Well, maybe we'll answer that as we go through.
I hope so. Thanks, guys.
I'll tease you there.
Just thinking then, some businesses may say, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to just stabilize, build resilience, and then really get on that growth trajectory. But hey, come on, where do I start? What do I do? There's so much going on out there. A bit of firefighting, worried about this, worried about that. What's a couple of good steps that business could follow to be doing this in a very structured way?
Okay. Anita, do you want that one first, or do you want me to go for that one?
I think, for a change, let me go first. The four words, that come to mind, and these are insight, oversight, hindsight, and foresight. I'll just briefly explain, these four. Number one, insight. A business needs to understand their internal ecosystem, what their core competencies are, what are the pain points, and also understand the external business environment. They could use tools like the PESTLE analytical model, which scans the external environment. This is in order to minimize the potential negative effects, whilst on the other hand maximizing and capitalizing on growth opportunities. Number two, oversight. Oversight in this case stands for good leadership, excellent governance structures and robust performance management system. The third one, hindsight, learning from the past, because hindsight encourages continuous improvement, which potentially could be a source of the identification of further unique selling propositions. And lastly, continuous scanning of the horizon, so that as a business you can proactively prepare and identify growth opportunities, and crucially, plan your resources accordingly, enable to seize on those opportunities. And I think those will be my four key words to a business.
And how do I follow that? Right, okay, fair play. Thank you very much. There's some great structure in there, Hannington, and absolutely 100% agree with you on that one. I think for me is that the business needs to establish where they are to look forward, so to follow all of those processes. But the one thing that a number of people will find very difficult is to put those in place, and also to critically look at the business. And I think that is the key part, is that critical look. And nobody, if you're in business, you'll definitely agree with me on this one. Your business is your baby as such. You've thought about it for so many years. You've built it. You've put so much energy, so much in, and watched it. The last thing you want to do is criticize your child. Nobody ever wants to do that. So what you will find is having a third party to come in to do that can be an incredibly useful journey. It can be painful, 100%, yes, but incredibly useful, because we can come in and look at your business in a critical way with those critical eyes, looking for those insights. What are you missing? What are you not seeing? Helping you with that foresight. Helping you with that oversight as well. So we can help put that structure into a relevant thing for you and your business on a bespoke basis. So if you want to get us in, great, absolutely brilliant. But if you don't want us in, that's perfectly fine as well. But find somebody that you like, know and trust who can come in and do that for you, and do that alongside of you and with you for all of those right reasons as well. So open your mind up to that, and you'll find that you'll move forward. So for me, it's a mindset change.
And that's why we're here, Glenn.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Have I oversold it? No, I haven't, but yeah.
Excellent. Do you know what, guys? I think you've sort of answered the next question that I was going to ask. So I'm going to sort of wrap it in with another one and just change it round a little bit. And it sort of kicks off with, there's a statement that almost the only constant in life is change, and hey, hasn't that been the case for the last six months? And I always remember it's going back a few years. An old boss of mine always had it on his desk, this book. It was a Tom Peters book, and it was just called Thriving on Chaos. And there seemed to be an approach, certainly within that organisation, that you get in your comfort zone far too easily, and everybody had to be kept on their toes. And I'm just thinking, with that in mind, is there an argument that now is the absolutely right time to grow a business, or is it a case that now is the wrong time and you might be taking your eyes off the ball and you should be focused around just keeping the business going? Again, very keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Now, you mentioned right at the very one size fits all. So this isn't advice for everybody that's here, because every business is different. For some businesses, you're continuing and doing business in exactly the same way, and there has been no change to you at all. For other businesses, you've had a natural acceleration in exactly the things that you sold before. You're just selling a lot more of it, and people are just coming in droves. For other businesses, you've seen a really big hit. So a diversification, a complete change may very well be in order to look at things. So yes, absolutely, you're right. It is a perfect time for some businesses to really reflect back on everything they've done so far and completely flip that to doing something completely different or similar, just in a different place. I think leaning any business is an incredibly useful tool. And again, previously, businesses wouldn't have wanted to have opened the door to this, and maybe, they're busy just, bringing new orders in, which is fabulous. But there's times when you duplicating, quadruplicating, and all those other things, same processes over and over and over, just for process sake, because you've always done it that way. Well, why don't you just move the photocopier, and then you can do it a different way, and then you're not having to chase around and triplicate everything. So for some businesses, a little bit of time now to stop, to look, to investigate, and then to start to see the weak areas and the strong areas, and actually, again, critically look at that. So we had sort of touched on that, but, not quite so much. Hannington, have you got anything to add to that, or oppose at all?
Right. No, I wouldn't want to, oppose a colleague. We are one coin, but different sides.
Yeah.
The saying that change is one of the constants in life. I think from a business perspective, I would, put forward that, planning is the only constant in business. And going straight, or answering your question directly, to do with is this the right time to invest or not? I would say yes. And from a generic perspective, I think all businesses have to always invest in their business, financially or non-financially. This is in order to gain that continuous and sustainable competitive, advantage, because we live in a very volatile, marketplace. I know the word investment is sometimes, synonymous with, parting with the hard-earned money, but I strongly believe that, growth or investment should not necessarily or all the time equate to, parting with back a lot of cash. For instance, you can invest time in reviewing your internal processes in order to identify, weak points within your, processes, with a view to, improving productivity and increasing, business, agility. And I'll just give one more example as well. You can also invest time in upskilling your staff. This could be, through, ourselves, Aim for God, as part of the program, we've got, free courses that you can tap into directly from us or the wider partnership. So there are ways that you can improve in order to, make the customer experience or the customer journey, slightly better. Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, can I dive in there just quickly before we move to the next one? Reference to time, again, concur 100% with Hannington on that one. The physical investment of time in business has never been more important, and it's always incredibly difficult for business owners, directors and senior leaders to spend the time in the business. they're often working in the business rather than on the business. And I know that's one of those sort of old phrases, but it's absolutely right. They're running the day to day rather than actually looking at where you are. So time is a massive investment thing that everybody should be doing in business period, but certainly now with the requirement to be so agile, to move to those ebbs and flows and finding opportunities and seizing those, time is a massive investment, 100%.
Thanks, guys. Look, I'm going to give you a 5-10 minute break now. Really appreciate your feedback and your views there. Come back to you shortly.